right, when you are trying to solve an equation where you have a variable on both sides of the equation, meaning you have one on the left side of the equal sign and one on the right side of the equal sign, you need to rewrite your equation so that you only have variables on one side. So it doesn't really matter which one you move, essentially. It's still going to work out in the same way in the end. But a good rule of thumb is to subtract the smaller, the variable with the smaller number coefficient. So here I am going to subtract 4k, from both sides. And when I do that, these cancel out, leaving me with 15 on the right is equal to 7k minus 4k, which is 3k. So now to solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I end up with k is equal to 5 as my solution to this equation. And I know I'm right because 7 times 5 is 35, 4 times 5 is 20, 20 plus 15 is 35. So since I have the same thing on both sides, I know that I did this correctly. Alright, here, if we have 5x minus 2 is equal to 3x plus 4, again, it doesn't really matter where we start, but a good rule of thumb is to start with the smaller. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, and that leaves me with 2x minus 2 is equal to 4, because all of this cancels out, leaving me with a 4 on the right. So now I want to isolate the variable, so I'm going to get rid of this minus 2 by adding 2. And whatever I do to the left, I have to do to the right. These cancel out, leaving me with 2x is equal to 6. I apologize. I know it looks, writing is horrible when I'm recording. Okay, and so now again I need to isolate the variable, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2 so that I can get the x by itself. And x is equal to 3. And again, you want to plug that in here. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 minus 2 is 13, so I got a 13 on this side. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 4 is 13. So I have the same thing on both sides, so I know that I did this correctly. Now, there are going to be times where you're going to get a solution that doesn't necessarily make sense. And so equations can be an identity if it's called the rule of identity, where if you have the same thing on both the left and the right side, whether you have 3 equals 3, negative 5 equals negative 5, 2.1 equals 2.1, 1/2 equals 1/2. Same thing on the left and the right, that's called identity. And that means it's always going to be true regardless of what you plug in for x. Contradiction means it's a false equation, and the left and the right side do not match. 2 is not equal to 3. 2 will not ever be equal to 3. So that's called a false equation because the answers contradict each other. So when this happens, if you have the identity where you have the same thing on both sides, that means any value will work. All values work for x. Okay? And this is going to happen even if I have a is equal to a. If I have the same variable on both sides, that's called the identity. That means that the answer is not 4 equals 4 or a equals a. You're going to tell me that the answer is infinitely many. If there is where you have something different on each side, so for example, negative 3 equals 10, that's a contradiction. That means there is no solution. So you would actually write no solution for your answer. Do not tell me the answer is negative 3 equals 10. That's not right. That's a contradiction. So therefore, there is no solution. So let's do a couple of examples where this is the case. And again, it's not always going to be the case. This is just kind of very randomly will this happen. This isn't going to happen all the time, but there is a case where it's either going to be infinite solutions or no solution. Excuse me. So, for example, we have negative 8x plus 6 plus 9x is equal to negative 17 plus x. The first thing I want to do, and I went ahead and highlighted it, is I want to simplify this equation. So negative 8x plus 9x is equal to is equal to x, 1x. Remember, the sign that's before the number is what goes with it. So this is negative 8x plus 9x, which is 1x, which is simply x. So then I've got plus 6 is equal to negative 17 plus x. So let's subtract 6 from both sides. It really doesn't matter, and I'll show you in a second why. But I can subtract 6 from both sides, and when I do that, I am left with x over here is equal to negative 17 minus 6, which is negative 23, plus x. Okay, now what I can do is I can subtract x from each side, and when I do that, I am left with 0 over here equals negative 23. 0 is not equal to negative 23. That's a contradiction. So therefore, there is no solution to this equation. Okay? All right, let's try this one. We have 4x plus 7 minus x equals 10 plus 3x. So again, I want to go ahead and simplify, so I went ahead and highlighted what we needed to simplify. 4x minus x is equal to 3x, because this is like 4x minus 1x, so that's 3x, plus 7 is equal to 10 plus 3x. So now I am going to subtract 7 from both sides. Oops. And so, I didn't mean to write that there. Do it again. So it leaves me with 3x equals 3 plus 3x. Well, first of all, you should already know that I can't get 3x is going to be equal to 3 plus 3x. So you already know that it's not going to work. But just to further prove the point, we can subtract 3x from both sides, and we will end up with 0 equals 3, which again, that's a contradiction, so therefore there is no solution to that problem. All right, well, let's try this one. We have x plus 4 minus 6x equals 6 minus 5x minus 2. So again, I went ahead and I highlighted everything that I needed to simplify. This is like 1x minus 6x, so that's going to be negative 5x plus 4 is equal to 6 minus 2 is 4 minus 5x. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And I end up with negative 5x equals negative 5x. Well, you can already see that you have the same thing on both sides, but just to kind of finish the problem, you divide both sides by negative 5, and you end up with x equals x. So this is an example where you're going to have infinite number of solutions. Okay, let me show you the same. I'm going to show you from right here. I'm going to show you from this point where if you had kind of looked at it a little bit differently. So if I have, sorry, okay, if I have, it just looks bad, doesn't it? Okay, if I have negative 5x plus 4 equals 4 minus 5x. Here in this example, I subtracted 4 from both sides. Let me show you what happens if you add 5x to each side. Okay, so I'm going to add 5x, and when I do that, I am left with 4 equals 4 because all of this cancels out. So the point of that is, notice that you get the same thing on both sides regardless of how you solve it. Either I'm going to get x equals x or 4 equals 4. This is just to show you that either way you're going to get the same thing on the left and on the right. So that's why there are infinite number of solutions to this equation.